looking, throwing in the end zone. Caught it! Montana, touchdown, John Taylor.
Young to the air, Young to Jerry Rice, touchdown San Francisco.
Young stumbles on the way back and fires up the middle. Pass is caught by Owens.
Hello and welcome to the 49ers Plus podcast. I'm your host, Al Moriello, and this is your source for the most objective 49ers discussion and analysis, plus timely and entertaining sports and pop culture topics. And today we're going to be talking about the 49ers preseason win over the New Orleans Saints. We're going to be talking injuries, game news, and notes. We're going to be talking about my updated 53-man roster projection coming off of this game, playing time, performance, etc. And we'll conclude with just some thoughts on where the Brandon Aiyuk contract negotiation stands. Since it's going to be a short week with the next preseason game concluding on Friday at the Raiders, this will just be a 49ers only podcast, no plus content, but that will return next week as we have a reaction to the final 49er preseason game and look ahead to cuts in the 53-man roster. But like always, it starts and today ends with the Niners, so let's get right into it.
Let's talk Niners.
So as I'm sure you already know, leading up to the game against the Saints, Kyle Shanahan canceled joint practices because of how banged up the team is overall. And I'm sure you also know that Kyle Shanahan in the past has said that he values joint practices more than the actual preseason games, but the team was snake bit by the injury bug even before their first preseason game at Tennessee. Then things just wound up getting worse. So they wound up losing Kalia Davis, who's going to have knee surgery. He will be on short-term injured reserve and will return around midseason. I'm not going to say this is a blessing for him because an injury and surgeries are not blessings for anybody, but there was the real chance that he didn't make the roster. Now, they could have faked an injury to put him on short-term IR to get a healthy body back mid-season, especially a defensive tackle, one that assuming or presumably they have some promise and faith in. But remember, he at best was D-tackle 5 behind Hargrave, Collins, Elliott, and Kevin Givens. So I'm not going to say he had a long path to the roster, but if the Niners only keep 9 offensive linemen, then it becomes, do they keep a 5th D-end or a 5th D-tackle? And we're going to talk about that more in the 53-man roster projection section a little bit later on. Rookie first-round pick wide receiver Ricky Pearsall re-aggravated a shoulder injury, hasn't been practicing, just been running the route tree on a side field, was not in the game against the Saints. The O-line between Feliciano, Burford, and Banks banged up. Feliciano, I believe it was the back, if I'm recalling that correctly. Burford had surgery on his hand, and Aaron Banks surgery on one of his fingers. All three did not play in the game against the Saints. Going back a couple weeks, Drake Jackson, defensive end, put on IR, the patellar tendon surgery, just not healing as quickly as Shanahan and Lynch would have liked. Rookie running back Isaac Guerendo, hamstring pull, first practice. Again, he may be another candidate for short-term IR, given some of the other numbers and depth that they have at the running back position. And he could be a body that could be fresh come midseason. Unless he heals up between now and the Raider game, it's hard to justify his roster spot solely for 2024. Beyond this season, I get it. He's Eli Mitchell's replacement, at least on the roster, adds a speed element, is a big bruising back as well, can catch the ball out of the backfield, but it's hard to trust him, and we know that Shanahan has trust issues if he hasn't really gotten any run, any play time at all in training camp, in padded practices, and in preseason games. We're not going to hold our breath to hope that Guerendo plays and plays well against the Raiders to solidify his roster spot, because they have fresh legs in Breida and Cody Schrader that could be running back 4 behind your presumed 3 in McCaffrey, Mitchell, and Mason. But if Guerendo or someone like Kalia Davis goes on IR, just so you guys know, players can return from short-term IR in a given season. And based on the research I did, each one of those players could be actually put on short-term IR twice. But 8 individual/specific players can come back from short-term IR. And if you make the playoffs, that number goes up to 10. And of course, you have Brandon Aiyuk out, Trent Williams out. Not like those 2 players would have played in the game. Maybe they would have gotten some snaps during a joint practice. But a banged up team, you heard it on the telecast today. It's not that they're running out of bodies, not when you have 90 players on your training camp roster, but when your punter's even hurt and they had to bring in another punter just to punt for preseason games, you know that you're a bit snake bit, and it's nothing that we 49er fans are unaccustomed to. But they did have a pretty decent run of health last year, and that's going to be important for them or any team to make a deep run into the playoffs. Now let's get to the actual game itself. Started out with Cody Schrader, rookie undrafted free agent out of Missouri, the running back, beginning at kick returner and running back, averaged about 30 yards on his kick returns. The starting O-line was Jalen Moore, Nick Sakiel, Jake Brendel, Dominic Puny, and Colton McKivitz. Started out with Purdy, started out okay. Didn't have a great couple series. Got a first down to Braden Willis, the tight end, then went 3 and out. Defense comes out on the field, forces a 3 and out on a nice wrap-up tackle and stop by George Odom. And Devondre Campbell, the free agent linebacker, rode in from the Packers to stop Jamal Williams, Saints running back, out of the backfield. So you had, a no-scoring first quarter. And what we also noticed or saw was Jacob Cowing, 4th-round rookie receiver out of Arizona, was put back as the punt returner this week. So he had a hamstring strain early on in camp. Got healthy this past week, played in the game, showed out well. We're going to go over some of the plays and some of the stats, but he was the starting punt returner. First punt sailed out of bounds, but did get a chance on his second punt return to do something with it. San Francisco's next drive was a 3 and out, and Brock Purdy had one of those run around, throwing across his body plays that he made infamous at times at Iowa State, but these are plays that Caleb Williams is getting sucked off on on social media for extending plays, trying to make something happen. Purdy's been doing this for a year and a half, and nobody really cares about that. But when a first-round pick, number 1 overall pick does it, it's something special. Meanwhile, Caleb Williams was under 50% of his passes in the last preseason game, 6 of 13. But hopefully, Purdy's going to get these plays out of his system. Obviously, he didn't play in preseason game 1. He probably will not play in preseason game 3, or if he does, just a drive. But he just can't be the reason why he can't be the reason why he's forcing passes into turnovers. Can't be the reason why they lose games or he makes a bonehead decision. That was his boogaboo at Iowa State. When it looks good and it works, it's one of those, oh shit, oh no, awesome, when you complete the pass. But you don't want that string of, oh no, oh shit, what the fuck did you just do, throwing an interception or a fumble or strip sack, whatever it may be. Just has to get that out of his system. Otherwise, he showed good mobility. So did Josh Dobbs and so did Tanner Mordecai in the fourth quarter. Those are just plays that he needs to be very selective of. And there was even a play on whether it was his last drive or second to last drive where he was rolling right and you saw him pointing to tight end Braden Willis, more or less asking him either to clear out, but then clear out and then come back, make himself as an available target to Purdy. And Purdy just actually ran out of bounds and took a 2-yard loss. So not a great day for Purdy, 2 of 6 for 11 yards and did take a sack. That was him just, I mentioned, running out of bounds. No cause for alarm, playing behind an offensive line that was missing a couple starters, was missing all skill position starters. Guys, doesn't matter. There is nothing to worry. I don't think anyone is worrying, but let's just kind of put it out there. It's really a competition for QB 2 and 3, of course, but I don't think there's really any eye-opening negative anythings about the way that Brock Purdy played. Rookie Renardo Green in the first half had a nice knockaway on a third down sideline pass with the Saints deep in their own end. In all fairness, the ball that Derek Carr threw was behind the wide receiver, but Renardo Green had a couple nice plays, especially that one. Cowing mentioned had a good first punt return, and he actually averaged, he had 2 returns for 19 yards, so a 9.5 average. That's essentially what Trent Taylor is going to give you, minus the possibility of an explosive return that I think Cowing can give, but that's the trade-off of explosiveness versus sure-handedness, and Cowing, at least on 2 punt returns, and he might have had a fair catch on another. I don't recall. I'm just obviously what I remember in looking at the stat sheet. Could be either Trent Taylor's path to the roster, off the roster completely, or potentially on the practice squad. Josh Dobbs, the second quarterback in. Guys, he solidified the QB2 spot more or less the day he signed. Anybody who thinks that this was an actual competition, once the 49ers guaranteed his $2.25 million salary, unless he shit all over himself during a game or looked like an abject disaster, Josh Dobbs is the number 2 quarterback. Brandon Allen and Tanner Mordecai are battling for QB3, and in my opinion, if I was constructing the roster, a spot not on the 53-man roster, but on the practice squad. You got to think about it this way. If they release both Josh Dobbs and Brandon Allen, who has a better chance of getting picked up to another team's active roster? It's Dobbs. Allen, could be a QB3 for a team that wants 3 on its roster. I'm not going to say there's no place on a roster for Brandon Allen. I just think in this roster construction, if it was myself doing it, I would only carry 2 and try to, not sneak, but try to sign Brandon Allen to the practice squad. We're going to get into that more a little bit later. Dobbs looking poised in the pocket, had some nice throws, a nice hot route, which looked like it turned into a wheel route to running back Matt Breida for a 20-yard gain on 3rd and 4. He later in the drive hit Jacob Cowing down the right sideline, a really well-placed deep pass, 39 yards to get the ball inside the 10. And that was one play after he threw a deep ball to Danny Gray on the left side, underthrew Danny Gray, and Gray's got to learn to, hit the brakes and try to come back through the cornerback to get a pass interference. He essentially hit the cornerback in the helmet with the ball. And then on 4th down, Dobbs with the read option keeper makes a man miss in the hole and scoots in for the touchdown to give the 49ers a lead, which they would not relinquish, beating the Saints 16-10. Josh Dobbs on the day, 12 of 21 for 133 yards. No touchdowns, did not take a sack, 3 rushes on the ground for 25 yards and a touchdown, a long of 13. And that was the run where he started scrambling to his right, ducked a defender, went all the way back across the field to his left, down the sideline for 13 yards and picking up a first down. That was really the good in terms of the 49ers running for the day. Josh Dobbs was your leading rusher, 3 for 25 and a touchdown. Behind him, Matt Breida, 7 for 24. Jacob Cowing went 1 for 19. And Cody Schrader will just end it here, 7 for 15 yards. Second half gave way to Brandon Allen, very efficient, has a good arm, can make nice throws. You saw it on an incompletion on the left-hand side on a deep out, but he got the ball there, just couldn't connect with his receiver, but Allen was 7 of 10 for 36 yards. And then Tanner Mordecai coming in the fourth quarter, 4 of 6 for 44 yards. Did take a sack as well, but then also showed some wheels running, couple scrambles, or at least a scramble off the right side where he gained some yardage. Dobbs, Mordecai, and Purdy all offer some mobility where Brandon Allen doesn't. It doesn't mean that he can't move. He is more of a pocket passer, and he wasn't really put in a position to break the pocket and scramble away from pressure, although 49er quarterbacks were under pressure I don't want to say most of the game, but Purdy probably saw more pressure than Shanahan and the offensive coaches would have liked. But again, working with, potentially 2 of 5 starting offensive linemen not being in. Receiving, Jacob Cowing, nice to see a rookie receiver on the field. Cough, cough, Ricky Pearsall led the way. So a couple punt returns, nice 39-yard bomb, 4 for 51 on 5 targets. Second-year tight end Cam Latu went 3 for 30 on 5 targets. Breida had 2 catches for 25. Tight end Braden Willis, 3 for 24. And tight end Jake Tongs, 3 for 22. The tight end battle, I think, is an interesting one that we're going to talk about more in the 53-man roster. They are giving Latu playing time and looks in the passing game. Same with Jake Tongas. And Eric Saubert started the game, had an easy completion from Brock Purdy on an out route, 1 for 5 yards. I think Saubert is basically a lock to make the roster. It's just a matter of who the next 2 are. We're going to talk about that in a few. Defensively, nice again to see a rookie leading the stat sheet. Linebacker, 7th round pick out of Florida State, Tatum Bethune, 10 total tackles, 6 solo tackles, and 1 tackle for loss. He was followed up by Jalen Graham with 6 tackles, Malik Mustafa with 5, safety Tracy Walker III with 4, and I'm just going to throw in Curtis Robinson with 4, 3 solos and 1 tackle for loss. We're going to get into why I'm mentioning him in a little bit. Overall, I think the Niners defense played okay. I don't think they're showing a whole lot, but what they are showing us is that the run defense was consistent with last week's, gave up over 130 yards again, this time 35 carries for the Saints, 134 and a touchdown. That's 3.8 yards per carry. No one had really a huge game. Jamal Williams went 5 for 32, had a 15-yard run. We can say as fans looking at this that, yes, they're backups that are playing. Some starters, if you want to call Yetur Gross-Matos as a starter, maybe a base down starter. A lot of the young defensive tackles were getting a lot of run. But hopefully this is more of a personnel thing and not a schematic thing, because the Niner backups are still essentially going up against some backups on against the opponent's offensive line. And it's not looking good. It looks better in the second half than the first half. And I don't know if Sorensen is making any adjustments whatsoever, or if it's a personnel type of thing, or they're just guessing right, or whatever it may be. But for those of us that watched the preseason game, you saw that the first half, the run defense did not look, again, with backup players, we're going to take it with a grain of salt, did not look like it's been shored up. And that was a concern down the stretch. And like I said, hopefully this is a personnel thing and not a schematic thing. Otherwise, passing, the Saints went 18 for 30, only 137 yards through the air. Niners got to the quarterback twice, and it was rookie Spencer Rattler. Any other big takeaways for the games or things that jumped out? Malik Mustafa made another good hit, breaking up a play or stopping a completion for a short game. Obviously, he's a hitter. He's getting some valuable snaps with Hufanga, obviously, not being healthy, and he probably wouldn't have played much in the preseason anyway. But between Jair Brown getting the star, Odom getting reps, which he obviously needs as a special teams mainly player throughout his career, having a rookie in Mustafa get some reps, having Hawkins get reps, bringing in a Tracy Walker who is probably destined for the practice squad. I think it would be a nice veteran addition on the practice squad. Jalen Mahoney, undrafted out of Vanderbilt, getting some snaps. The young players that we wanted to see shine or make a splash play, right? Because let's go back to Caleb Williams. It's all about the splash plays. You could be under 50% passer, but you make a splash play or two and you're the next coming of Jesus Christ. We've seen in the preseason Malik Mustafa make some splash plays. Now we've seen Jacob Cowing do a little something, catching a nice 35-plus yard bomb, showing a little something on punt returns. Cody Schrader got the start at running back and did a serviceable job as a kick returner. A 2.1 yard average isn't going to jump off the page, but you can see him run hard. You can see him making himself an option in the passing game as a check down. He has a long road to making the roster, but the offensive staff, obviously led by Shanahan, is giving him extended looks on top of the fact that Mitchell's hurt, Mason didn't play this game, and obviously McCaffrey's not going to play. So when your top three running backs aren't playing, other players are going to get extended looks. And Tatum Bethune, now I honestly don't think he's going to make the roster. I think he's a practice squad candidate. I don't want to say it best because he's lighting up and leading the stat sheet. Might not be making plays that are totally splash plays that kind of jump off the screen when we're watching the game, but breaking down the tape, I'm sure, listen, he has stuff to work on too, but I'm sure there's good things that are coming out of the tape for Tatum Bethune and a lot of the other younger players, undrafted rookie free agents, players that just need more reps, like a Robert Beal, like a Samuel Womack, a Curtis Robinson, a Darrell Luter, players that I mentioned earlier, and to see Devondre Campbell, get the start this game, make a couple tackles, make his presence felt with Giorgio Odom on a third down stop. These are all good signs, and at least, no injuries to speak of. Actually, I shouldn't say that. One of the new offensive linemen that they signed, Williams, the 10-plus year veteran, aggravated his knee, went down early in the game, did not return. We'll see if that's something that he could shake off and show what else he can bring to the D-line that third preseason game on Friday at the Raiders. So it's preseason game number 2. Happy to see Tanner Mordecai get a little bit of, some reps. All 4 quarterbacks played. 6 attempts for Purdy, 10 for Allen, 6 for Mordecai, and 21 for Dobbs, in addition to obviously whatever they're doing in practice. But, nothing really huge, obviously, to take away. Just need to slow down the injury bug. Just need to slow it down. And as we're not really totally looking ahead to the Raider game now, but is a Pearsall going to get on the field? Is Mason going to be back? Is Mitchell going to be back? Any of the offensive linemen? Is, Burford's going to be out for a while, potentially a short-term IR candidate. Is Feliciano going to play? Are they going to see if Banks is going to be okay? However, they're going to, tape up that broken hand. Puny has looked good at right guard. And if he wins that position, and let's just jump into the projected 53-man roster now after preseason game number 2. And this isn't as much a knee-jerk reaction to an update. I didn't do this after preseason game number 1, but an update based on, I think, maybe where I was mid-July before training camp started. And let's start with the quarterbacks. We're going to go kind of obviously all the way down each position. It's going to be, to me, Brock and Dobbs. I think there's too much. I've said it before. I'm just going to keep saying, and I very well might be wrong. If it's a comfort thing for Shanahan to have 3 quarterbacks on the roster, I think it's going to be, or it should be, Purdy and Dobbs as your 2 quarterbacks, and either Allen or Mordecai on the practice squad. I think why it'll be easier to get Allen on the practice squad than maybe some may think is he was with the team last year. He knows the system. He has some guaranteed money, I'm assuming, on top of whatever the practice squad pay would be for him. Would he want to move? Would he want to go to another city and team and learn another system? And hey, if it's for an actual roster spot, absolutely. But if it's trading practice squad roster spots, I think he should, and would make sense to stay with San Francisco. If Allen goes, Mordecai, I would be totally fine as QB3 on the practice squad. And again, with the new rule change, you can elevate a practice squad quarterback every week to be your QB3, and it doesn't count against your active roster. Your 53-man roster. It does count against your game day roster, and it is one of your 2 elevations each week. Now, there may be some weeks where the Niners need 2 elevations. Say they need another offensive lineman because they have injuries, another D lineman. Then they don't elevate Mordecai or Allen. They cross their fingers and hope that they don't get to QB3 like they did a year and a half ago in the NFC Championship game at Philadelphia, because how often does it really happen? I think the Niners reacted appropriately to the NFC Championship game injury debacle at quarterback by carrying 3 quarterbacks last season. And I think, again, with the new rule change, you can do that. And if you want to do it absolutely, should the Niners make the playoffs, to make sure you have 3 on the field in case of a disaster. But for a given week of the season, assuming it's not, say, an elimination game or a game where they need to win the division or something, later on the last 3 or 4 weeks of the season, I think it's totally okay and rational to keep 2 quarterbacks on the 53 with Allen or Mordecai on the practice squad. At running back, it's obviously McCaffrey, Mitchell, and Mason. Whatever order that is between Mitchell and Mason, you could flip a coin at this point. And I think running back 4 right now is Matt Breida. Trust, 7-year veteran, was with Shanahan before. I think it's not a leap to say he would trust Matt Breida over 2 rookies. Grendo, who hasn't gotten any significant playing time yet, that may change at the Raiders, and he may do stuff. If he can practice this week, it could be an eye-opening decision that the 49ers would have to make. And Cody Schrader. But again, let's just think about it this way. If Matt Breida and Cody Schrader were both released, who has a better chance of getting picked up to a team's active roster, a team that has injuries at running back? The answer is Matt Breida. So I think you can release Cody Schrader, and granted, he's run hard. He hasn't had holes at times. They've been bottling up the run. And again, this is a 49er rushing attack that last week was held under 80 yards. This week was 22 rushes for 93 yards. So better. 4.2 yard average, and that 1 touchdown was coming off the courtesy of the legs of Josh Dobbs. But I think Schrader, even if he's showing some value as a kick returner, and maybe the Raider game, they put Breida back there, right? Let's say, hey, if you're going to be, running back 4, and running back 4, whoever it is, might not be active anyway. It might not even matter who running back 4 is for this year if the first 3 running backs stay healthy. But I think if Schrader gets released, he's an easier, almost guaranteed stash on the practice squad versus if you release Breida. And in this projection, I have Isaac Guerendo going on short-term IR or potentially long-term IR, because now you have to think about, okay, now you have a rookie, and I'm cool with this idea of keeping players on short-term IR to keep them fresh mid-season, fresh legs, even though you're coming back from an injury. If it's a Kalia Davis, if it's a Spencer Burford, and Isaac Guerendo. The issue, though, between those 3 players, Kalia Davis hasn't played a lot, but he does have some NFL experience. Obviously, Burford has a lot of NFL experience, although it hasn't been great at times. Isaac Guerendo has none. So if you put him on short-term IR for the first 4 weeks and he practices for 4 weeks, and then you put him in a game, how comfortable are you going to feel if you're Kyle Shanahan? Or you just put him on the active roster. He could be running back 4, probably inactive. Say Breida gets hurt, or Mitchell or Mason. Then I would slide Breida up to running back 3, bring Guerendo on as running back 4. And maybe then that's not as much of a trust issue that Shanahan may have with him, but it would be difficult for a rookie who hasn't really practiced or played much since being drafted to reacclimate himself quickly, say starting in week 7 or 8 of the regular season. So I think he's a candidate for IR, whether it's short or long term. I think Breida is the safer bet right now. At tight end, it's going to be Kittle. I think it's going to be Eric Saubert, Braden Willis, and Cam Latu. I think Jake Tonjes, who has had, a couple nice receptions each game. Again, I think he's just a player that if or when he's released, an relatively easy stash on the practice squad. And if it's not him, it could be the rookie Mason Pline out of Furman, who hasn't been on the stat sheet in either preseason game. And I'm not sure how, I'm not at practices, what he's essentially doing at practice. I don't think they're going to give up on Cam Latu just yet. And Braden Willis is the de facto backup fullback, and they're giving him a lot of playing time in these preseason games. I think Willis is basically a lock to make the roster. Right now, I'll take Latu over Tonjes as tight end number 4. Wide receiver, Debo, Aiyuk, Jennings, Pearsall, Cowing, and Conley. So I'm going to say right now Trent Taylor is going to make it to the practice squad. You're seeing Trent Taylor, run routes, can't beat some of the safeties, had a drop. This is not a knee-jerk reaction to this game, but I'm going to make a projection, and I have the right to change it after the Raider game. Who knows what's going to happen? Maybe someone looks terrible, somebody gets hurt, something happens that could shake up any one of these, positional line items. But if Jacob Cowing can progress to being a sure-handed returner, you see the speed, you see the route running and the agility, the extra dimension that he adds as a Debo light, a Debo very light, because Debo's probably got, 25, 30 pounds on him. It's another weapon, another Swiss Army knife, in the truest sense of the word, where you can put Cowing back as a punt returner. You can give him end arounds. He has the speed to go deep. More flexibility than Trent Taylor if Cowing keeps trending to be trusted as a punt returner, or if it's a combination of Cowing and Pearsall. I know he's been back there as well. Trent Taylor would only make the roster because of punt returns. I don't think that's a good enough reason right now to make the roster. Practice squad, yes. Offensive line, Trent Williams, Aaron Banks, Jake Brendel, John Feliciano, Colton McKivitz. And listen, Dominic Puny may win that right guard spot over Feliciano, and right now it's probably trending that he will. And that actually may be a good thing, because then you have Feliciano as essentially, your number 1 backup at all 3 interior line spots, both guard spots and center. Jalen Moore, backup left tackle. Chris Hubbard, backup right tackle. And I'm going to give now the 9th and final offensive line spot to Nick Sakiel. Got playing time at center, has played guard. I'm a big fan of Ben Barch. I think there's still competition to be had with the interior linemen. The only one that's really separating himself is Puny because of how he's playing. Feliciano's hurt. And Spencer Burford taking a step back due to the broken hand is allowing, obviously, some of the younger players or backup players to get more reps and show what they can do. But and even Chris Forrester, the offensive line coach, said Sakiel has more flexibility to play center, whereas Barch is mainly a guard. And when you're getting into, linemen 8 and 9 out of 9 possible linemen, at least in my projection for the 49ers, flexibility is going to be the name of the game. So right now, Nick Sakiel makes it as an offensive lineman on the 53. Let's flip to defense. Defensive line at D tackle, Javon Hargrave, Malik Collins, Jordan Elliott, and Kevin Givens. Defensive ends, Bosa, Floyd, Gross Matos, Robert Beal Jr. And now I'm going to take a pause saying, all right, I have 8 defensive linemen on the team. I think the Niners are going to go with 9. They could go with 10 and take away a receiver or take away a corner, which we're going to get to momentarily, which again is just another reason why I'm only going with 2 quarterbacks, because there's a lot of talent, and they're going, when you release some of these veterans, even some of the young players, you're going to lose them on waivers. I mean, you can't save everybody, and there is that limit of 6 veteran players on the practice squad and 10 rookies or players with 2 or less years of NFL experience. So I'm thinking, is it going to be McGill? Is it going to at defensive tackle? Could it be McGill? Could it be Evan Anderson? Could it be Shackle Brown? Kalia Davis, IR candidate, mid-season reinforcements. Should he be needed? If everybody's healthy come week 8, he's on IR for 4 weeks. They open his practice window. He comes back, let's say week 8. It might be longer than that given the knee surgery. If he's not needed, they just revert him back to IR and he's done for the year. No harm, no foul. But I think an Anderson, a McGill, a Shackle Brown, any one of those 3 players or 2 of those 3 players, or all 3 of them could make the practice squad and be called up if needed, because 5 defensive tackles are not going to be active on game days. So I'm going to give the 9th defensive line spot to newcomer defensive end Jonathan Garvin, who was with the Packers and played in the UFL in the spring season. Because let's be honest, after Bosa, Floyd, and Yatir, there's not good depth at DN number 4. And what team honestly has good depth at DN number 4? This could be a spot where come final cuts, the Niners could be looking to the waiver wire to add more proven depth to their defensive end spot. But right now, I don't know what those cuts are going to be. So I'm going to go Jonathan Garvin. It would have been Drake Jackson, well, if he was much healthier than he was, and he's obviously on IR now. But I'll give Garvin the 9th defensive line spot. At linebacker, obviously, Greenlaw is going to be on short-term IR. He'll return at some point. Fred Warner, Devondre Campbell, D. Winters, Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles, and Curtis Robinson as your 5th linebacker. I can't see them keeping 6, although they theoretically have a 6th when Dre Greenlaw comes back. So what does that mean? That means Jalen Graham gets released and Tatum Bethune gets released. Curtis Robinson, the past 2 preseason games at least, and I know this shouldn't be that much of a marker for at least me or anyone, he's been getting playing time ahead of Jalen Graham. He has been in the NFL 2 years longer than Jalen Graham. More experience. And if it comes down to linebacker 4 or 5, I think they would go with the player with a bit more experience and hope to put Jalen Graham on the practice squad. Now, linebackers, I don't want to say Jalen Graham or Curtis Robinson is just a guy. But I think linebackers are relatively easy to find when they're bottom of the roster type players that will help out on special teams, players that would really only see playing time due to injury to the players ahead of them. And if it's close between Robinson and Graham, if it's a coin flip, then I could also see them going with Jalen Graham because he's got 3 more years on his contract, just like D. Winters does. Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles, I think, is pretty much solidified unless he totally, between now and the Raider game, becomes an absolute disaster and complete liability on defense, has a guaranteed contract, only around $2 million, but that counts for something, especially when you can have a Robinson or a Graham and potentially a Bethune on the practice squad. And listen, good for Tatum Bethune, and I'm not saying this sarcastically, the way he is playing, he is making his presence felt to the coaches and on film. Does he have things to clean up? Absolutely. Is he in position for every tackle he made or missed? No. But as a 7th round pick, aside from, I guess, maybe Brock Purdy, but as a 7th round linebacker or a defensive player, you want to be maybe leading the stat sheet for your position group or defense as a whole because you have that uphill climb to make the roster. I still think Bethune is destined for the practice squad. And at cornerback, We're going to go 6. The only thing that sorted itself out was Ambry Thomas breaking his forearm. He will be released, I believe, outright once final cuts happen. But it should be Ward, Lenore, Renardo Green, Isaac Yadam, Rock Ya-Sin, and Daryl Luter. I think really the only noteworthy player would be Samuel Womack getting released. And said it before, and I'm going to keep saying it, the strongest cornerback group. And you have a nice mix of experience, all Pro Bowl caliber players in Charvarius Ward, Lenore, who could play inside and outside, the same with Green, the same with Rock Ya-Sin, and Yadam and Luter as outside players, and still not defined in terms of who the starting 3 are. We know the starting 2, Ward and Lenore. We just don't know where Lenore is going to play. Does Green, the rookie, start outside or inside? Isaac Yadam's been dealing with a rolled ankle, a sprained ankle in camp, so he hasn't played the last 2 preseason games. We'll see if he plays against the Raiders. I believe he makes the roster. It's just a question of, does he potentially start or not? And at safety, Hufanga, Jair Brown, George Odom, and Malik Mustafa. Obviously, your specialists are Wisnowski, Moody, and Tabor Pepper. So that is the 53 as of August 19th. But I reserve the right to make any adjustments based on wildly good performance or injury coming off of the final preseason game at the Raiders. Now, before we wrap up, just a little bit more on the Brandon Aiyuk contract situation. This past week, you heard John Lynch, when being interviewed, say he doesn't like that this is taking this long. He feels the urgency to get Brandon Aiyuk signed, even though Aiyuk has been in the building since training camp started. And it apparently sounds like the Niners are close with a contract extension with Aiyuk. And it sounds like it's a 4-year deal. And it sounds like, per Mike Garafolo of NFL Network, that generally speaking, the 4th year of a 4-year deal is not guaranteed. It's the first 3 years where you're talking about guaranteed money and cash flow and numbers that generally affect the cap more than that final year, which is not guaranteed, and you could potentially release a player or get an out or actually renegotiate the contract at the 4th year to bring it down again. But it sounds like Aiyuk wants some guarantees in the 4th year. Now, let's just hypothetically say he gets, and the number ultimately doesn't matter, $60 million in guarantees. To me, it should not matter if that $60 million is spread through 3 years or 4 years because, and I'm assuming good health on Aiyuk's part, when he gets to year 4, he could again, beginning of year 4, he could again sit out to negotiate a contract, an extension, or a trade. Of course, if he gets hurt, something season-ending or catastrophic sometime in year 3, the Niners could release him with a minimal cap hit. I get how he wants to protect himself from that injury, and maybe they work out some sort of an injury guarantee instead in year 4 versus something that is a fully ironclad guarantee. But once you get to the beginning of year 4, and I think that'll be Aiyuk's year 29 season or 30, he's going to be going to free agency again. And the Niners are going to have to make the decision, do we want to re-up him? Do we want to re-up, Ricky Pearsall? Do we want to trade him? Aiyuk is going to get another contract again, knock on wood, barring any sort of career-ending injury anytime during the contract. I don't think this 4th year deal should be as big of a hiccup or a roadblock as it is. As with any negotiation, if you're an employer, you're going to offer a low salary. And if you're the employee, you're going to want a high salary or request a higher salary maybe than you're anticipating to get down to the number you actually have in your mind. And reports, and again, we'll take them with a grain of salt, are saying that the Niners feel like that they have acquiesced enough during this negotiation. But if they're going to give Aiyuk $26 million a year, if that report is actually true, then you can't even count that as a baseline because that is just off. That is just so off the market that the 49ers shouldn't really feel like, well, we came up from 26 and you're asking, BA, your camp is asking for this and this and that and that. San Francisco, you didn't start from a serious position in terms of negotiation. And I'm sure in your mind, Aiyuk didn't either, which is why, there's not going to be any bad blood or anything. And you shouldn't look at it as who won the negotiation and who lost and this or that. The Niners are known as difficult negotiators, and the Niners are known as a team that can't get this shit done early in the year, early in the calendar year. And these things drag out through late spring and early to midsummer. And it's just a position that they should never have been in. Even if they had offered Aiyuk 28, he still might have been asking for 30 because, like anything, you don't take the first offer. But the Niners started out with such a low first offer that I don't think they should look at it as we've acquiesced too much. You're making a Super Bowl run this year. He is your best receiver. I'm not saying give him everything that he wants and potentially more, but I think this is taking too long for the caliber of player he is, meaning I can understand why it took so long for Nick Bosa when you're talking about a top 2 or 3 at your position, or a Trent Williams, or even when the negotiation happens with Brock Purdy, just because quarterback's the most important position in sports. But for Aiyuk, who's a very good receiver, a top 10 receiver, why can the Lions get this stuff done early and the Niners can't? Why can the Eagles with 2 receivers, Brown getting a deal redone and Devontae Smith getting a deal, the Dolphins with 2 receivers, Tyreek Hill getting a contract redone, and Jalen Waddle? Why can these other teams get things done and the Niners can't? Now, Dallas hasn't yet with CeeDee Lamb. The Bengals still haven't yet with Jamar Chase or T. Higgins. I get it. The Niners aren't alone in this, but they are alone in having things drag out with their, key players longer than they really should. I still think he's going to sign. I think he's going to be a Niner. Media reports are saying, well, nothing's off the table. He could still be traded. Guys, he's not going to be traded. He's not. I've been saying for a year and a half, he's not going to be traded. He's going to be extended, and Debo will be the one that gets traded after this offseason, and I'm going to stand by that. No matter what, we're not going to see Aiyuk in preseason game number 3 at the Raiders anyway. But remember, after that last game, there's still 2 weeks before the season starts for Aiyuk and Williams and others to get ready and healthy. But that's going to conclude the 49ers Plus podcast for this week, or at least the early portion of this week, since we'll have one over the weekend after the Niners-Raiders preseason game on Friday. Like always, I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to make us part of your listening routine. Whatever you are doing between now and when we speak again, stay happy, stay healthy, and stay safe. We will talk soon. Take care.